Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajachanarandana Jasodanandana Brajachanarandana Jamunatira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Adi Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajachanarandana Jasodanandana Brajachanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jayo Vishnu His Divine Grace Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. So Yasodanandana.
It's not a Zoom call. It's a YouTube.
It's not. Okay.
Sorry,
Huh?
It's okay. He said.
Just proceed. This is a continuation of last Sunday's topic. And last Sunday, we discussed a section from chapter 16, entitled How Maharaj Parikshit Received the Age of Kali. And how to understand when some wrong has been done, how to identify the wrongdoer. What we heard in chapter 16 was a discussion between the personality of Dharma in the form of a bull having a discussion with the personality of the earth in the form of a cow. And in this age of Kali, the cow, or Mother Earth, was not looking so good. And so there was a nice discussion why the personality of religious principles or Dharma in the form of a bull questioned Mother Earth. I'm just going to read a few of the verses. She's experiencing, Earth is experiencing, the cow is experiencing sadness because of the age of Kali. Madam, are you not hale and hearty? Why are you covered with a shadow of grief? It appears by your face that you have become black. Are you suffering from some internal disease? Or are you thinking of some relative who is away at a distant place? I have lost my 3 legs and am now standing on one only. Are you lamenting for my state of existence? Or are you in great anxiety because henceforward the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you? Or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought? So Mother Earth is supporting and sustaining life on this planet, and she's not doing well because Dharma is not doing well, and as a consequence, the condition of living entities on Earth is not doing well. Its symptoms, these are very interesting ways of describing the symptoms of the age of Kali, because after Krishna's departure, shortly after, there's a little juncture of time in between Krishna's departure and the commencing of the age of Kali, but it happens rather soon after. The absence of Krishna's marks of his feet on earth, which brought about all auspiciousness for earth and abundance of everything, because she was very happy being touched by the feet of Krishna. Now Krishna's gone. And in that absence, she's feeling something. And the age of Kali has begun. And in the age of Kali, the principles of Dharma are nearly broken, reduced, and nearly broken. We discussed this last Sunday. So who's to say who's the wrongdoer? So that's now coming up in the next chapter, 17, when Maharaj Parikshit hears, he receives word, that in his kingdom there's an imposter king, a low-class person dressed in the garments of a king and the crown of a king, that's beating on a bull with a club. And he's enraged. And he's also very happy because kings like a good tussle. So with his entire army, he goes to confront this wrongdoer, the breaker of the legs of a bull. And he's working on number 4. The bull was as white as a white lotus flower. He was terrified of the Shudra who was beating him, and he was so afraid that he was standing on one leg, trembling and urinating. That one leg that's remaining is the leg of truthfulness, austerity, and mercy, nearly broken. Although the cow is beneficial because one can draw religious principles from her, she was now rendered poor and calfless. Her legs were being beaten by a Shudra, so it was a cow, not a bull, being beaten. There were tears in her eyes, and she was distressed and weak. She was hankering after some grass in the fields. Maharaj Parikshit, well equipped with arrows and bow, and seated on a golden embossed chariot, spoke to him, the Shudra, with a deep voice sounding like thunder. Who are you? You appear to be strong, and yet you dare kill, within my protection, those who are helpless? By your dress, you appear to be a godly man, but by your deeds, you are opposing the principles of the twice-born Kshatriyas. You rogue, do you dare beat an innocent cow? Because Lord Krishna and Arjuna, the carrier of the Gandiva bow, are out of sight, since you are beating the innocent in a secluded place, you are considered a culprit, and therefore you deserve to be killed. Then Maharaj Parikshit asked the bull, Oh, who are you? Are you a bull as white as a white lotus, or are you a demigod? You have lost 3 of your legs and are moving on one only. Are you some demigod, causing us grief in the form of a bull? Now for the first time in a kingdom, well protected by the arms of the kings of the Kuru dynasty, I see you grieving with tears in your eyes. Up till now, no one on earth has ever shed tears because of royal negligence. Oh, son of Surabhi, you need lament no longer. There is no need to fear this low-class Shudra. And, O mother cow, as long as I am living as the ruler and subduer of all envious men, there is no cause for you to cry. Everything will be good for you. O chaste one, the king's good name, duration of life, and good rebirth vanish when all kinds of living beings are terrified by miscreants in his kingdom. It is certainly the prime duty of the king to subdue first the sufferings of those who suffer. Therefore, I must kill this most wretched man because he is violent against other living beings. Maharaj Parikshit repeatedly addressed and questioned the bull thus, O son of Surabhi, who has cut off your 3 legs? And the man is standing there with a club in his hand, and he's asking the bull, who did it? Who's the wrongdoer? That's our topic. In the state of kings who are obedient to the laws of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, there is no one as unhappy as you. O bull, you are offenseless and thoroughly honest. Therefore, I wish all good for you. Please tell me of the perpetrator of these mutilations, which blackmail the reputation of the sons of Pritha. Whoever causes offenseless living beings to suffer must fear me anywhere and everywhere in this world. By curbing dishonest miscreants, one automatically benefits the offenseless. And he goes on, the duties of a king. And here's the response from the bull. These words just spoken by you befit a person of the Pandava dynasty. Even Krishna appreciated the qualities of the Pandavas. O greatest among human beings, it is very difficult to ascertain the particular miscreant who has caused our sufferings, because we are bewildered by different opinions of theoretical philosophers. And the commentary speaks about the 6 darshans, the interpretations by different philosophers of the Vedas. Some say this and that and the other thing. Some of the philosophers who deny all sorts of duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Others say that superhuman powers are responsible, while yet others say that the activity is responsible, and that the gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. There are also some thinkers who believe that no one can ascertain the cause of distress by argumentation, nor know it by imagination, nor express it by words. O sage among kings, judge for yourself by thinking over all this with your own intelligence. So that's the foundation for the topic. Maybe we can work our way to Krishna's opinion. Tarka apratishta, the statement is there. By reason and logic, one cannot reach any conclusive truth about anything. The process of logic and reason has its place. We use it all the time. Even to make the statement has its logic and reason to it. But it's inconclusive. Meaning, someone, the history of mankind goes like this. Someone considers and makes some proposition. Someone later comes along and says, there's holes in this bucket, here's a better bucket. And they put forward another consideration, another conception. And then someone comes along and says, well, this may be better than that, but that was better than this in these ways. And a third thing is actually the better way to look at everything. And so it goes. It's always inconclusive. And most importantly, it cannot reach that which, by the process of mental speculation, the mind cannot reach transcendence. The mind is a material instrument, and transcendence is beyond the reach of a material instrument. So it's always going to be inconclusive. How to understand that which is conclusive? So there's different philosophers, and they have very strong systems for reaching conclusions about the cause of things, the cause of happiness and the cause of distress specifically here. It's not new. Even when Krishna was present 5,000 years ago, he presents one of those doctrines to his father, Nanda Maharaj. When Nanda Maharaj is preparing to perform the Indra Yagya, Krishna comes along and asks Nanda, what's happening here? Looked like there's some festival being arranged. Can you tell me what is this festival about, the yagya, the sacrifice that's being performed? Is it coming from the Vedas, or is it a family tradition? If it's family tradition, doesn't mean it's a 0, but it's not a 10 either, because the Vedas have to be followed. And family tradition is also to be followed, but it's not as strong as from the Vedas. And if it's from the Vedas, then please tell me what's the purpose, because if you do something that's within the Vedas without knowing the purpose of what's in the Vedas, you don't get the full result. So you're my father, I'm your son. Please disclose the truth. And his father explains, it's a sacrifice to Indra because we're cowherds and we're dependent upon rain, and Indra has supplied nice rain, and so we're making an offering to express our gratitude to Indra for the production that has come from the nice rain that he's provided. And then in response, Krishna speaks an atheistic philosophy. And the atheistic philosophy is karma mimamsa philosophy. Jaimini is the propounder of that philosophy, which goes like this. You don't have to worship anybody, because whether there's somebody upstairs, somebody in a higher position or not, above them is the law of karma. Because if they're just dispensing according to your past deeds, then just do good deeds. Just do your karma properly. And whether there's somebody or there isn't somebody, just do good deeds, because that's really the highest principle. Just do good. So follow the codes of the Vedas without any regard for the purpose behind the codes of the Vedas, because you want to prosper. So do good deeds. That's all. In other words, Vishnu disappears. Yagya vai Vishnu is a standard phrase within Vedic texts. You find it several times in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's purports. Sacrifice is Vishnu. Sacrifice is meant for Vishnu, and sacrifice is Vishnu. Vishnu is situated in acts of sacrifice. But if one doesn't know that, if the disposition is in opposition to Vishnu or to God, to the Supreme, one may do nice karma, but one is still caught in the bondage of birth and death and the unwanted aspects of misery in material existence. So it's not sufficient to say just do good works. And whether you do good works or not, that's the cause of suffering or happiness. There's a cause beyond the good works, is in other words. There's a dispenser of. So I'm going to discuss a little bit from the 11th canto of Bhagavatam. It's a nice section of the Bhagavatam where Krishna is speaking to Uddhava, just like Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. And Arjuna is in a relationship of friendship with Krishna. Sakha. Bhaktosi me sakha cheti. Krishna tells Arjuna, you'll be able to understand everything because of these two qualifications. You're my devotee, you're my dear friend. But Uddhava is even a more dear friend. And so, like there's Bhagavad Gita, Krishna instructing Arjuna, there's this very detailed section of the 11th canto of Bhagavatam where Krishna is instructing Uddhava. And Uddhava's question there is not, who's the wrongdoer? You could say, who is the doer? But he says, what's the cause of suffering? Because everybody wants happiness without exception. And we want happiness because it's the nature of the soul. We're part and parcel of the Supreme, who is Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. And we're part and parcel. So it's our nature. Ananda is our nature. We want happiness. There's nothing wrong with wanting happiness. Then why is there distress if we want happiness? That's Uddhava's question. And to answer that question, it's a really interesting chapter. I invite you to read it, all of our listeners here. You have a nice Srimad Bhagavatam set here on the shelf. 11th canto. The Avanti Brahmin story in canto 11. So Krishna tells the story of the Avanti Brahmin to answer his question. And it's a long chapter, but the short version goes like this. In the ancient city of Avantipur, there was a Brahmana who was very wealthy and very miserly. He was so miserly that he didn't have any time to take care of the needs of his family and friends, and he was following religious principles. He was a suitable Brahmana, and therefore prosperity was coming, because from punya comes from dharma comes artha, from punya comes well-being. So he was doing very well, and continuing on with his religious activities. His karma was just fine. His dharma and karma were just fine, but he became so absorbed in his two things, so absorbed in his prosperity that he began neglecting his spiritual practices. And he was not properly giving affection and other forms of needed care to his family members. So they were becoming resentful due to neglect. And as fate would have it, all of his wealth started to disappear. Different things happened, and eventually he became destitute. And when he became destitute, his family turned on him. It's like, get out. And that not just his family turned against him, but everybody, because he had been so hard-hearted to everybody. When he was in this destitute condition, all he had left to maintain himself was just begging. And as he would go begging, people would send him away. You're a cruel person, you deserve this. And when he would receive something, the children would come and snatch it or urinate at his begging bowl and call him names, and he was suffering like anything. Because he had that previous Brahminical tendency or dharmic tendency, he began to turn his attention to God again in that situation of difficulty, and began to ponder the question, why is there suffering? It's just similar. What's the cause of my misery? What event is it? Is it the stars? Or, is it my past activity? Is it other people? Is it material nature? Why am I in this situation? And he began to analyze one by one each of those possibilities and ruled them out, because he had some intelligence and he was using his intelligence to discriminate. And his conclusion, this is like the conclusion of the whole chapter, is the cause of suffering is the mind. The place where misery occurs is the mind. That doesn't mean if you stub your toe, it feels good, but how you respond to that, or whatever the circumstance is. We all know some people that are having medical difficulties, psychological difficulties, and so forth. But when the spiritual connection is established, then even there's physical and even mental duress, one can go beyond on the other side of it and not feel disturbed. Even there's cause for disturbance. One can recognize there's a cause of disturbance. physical pain, or someone is mistreating you, or something, or something, or something. But so why someone may be mistreating you may be your karma, but your experience doesn't have to be misery. Your experience has everything to do with the mind. And the mind, of course, is influenced by the modes of nature. So one can be very happy, one can be very sad, one can be very ambitious. There are different modes of nature that respond to what's going on out there that's coming your way. And the day-to-day experiences of life, or week to week, or some period of time in your life where it's whatever it is. It's good or it's bad, good fortune, ill fortune. Sad asad yoni janmasu, we're the architects of our own good fortune, ill fortune. But the happiness is not good fortune, ill fortune. The happiness or distress is the mind and how we perceive things. So, it's a little awkward to say the wrongdoer is the mind. But certainly distress is seated within the mind. So it's an interesting section where, stepping back from just the storyline, this is Maharaj Parikshit receiving the age of Kali. Because prior to the personality of Kali being present, Krishna was present, and it was a different age. And after Krishna's departure, the age of Kali begins. Now sometimes there's this question raised. Maharaj Parikshit is a pure devotee. He's very, very dear to Krishna, even before he was born, very dear to Krishna, and throughout his life, very dear to Krishna. And here he sees this wrongdoing, someone's breaking the legs of a bull. And he is powerful, and he's given all these reasons why it's his duty as a representative of the Pandavas and representative of Krishna to curb the wrongdoers, so that those who are law-abiding, or the virtuous people, they're safe and protected. He knows what his duty is. So, question. Why didn't Maharaj Parikshit just finish him? Was saved a lot of trouble, right? The age of Kali would have been a different age without the personality of Kali. And the explanation is given. Being a pure devotee, he understood in a way that pure devotees can understand. There's a plan. The cycle of the 4 yugas, Maharaj Parikshit doesn't have the right to interfere with Krishna's plan. So why would Krishna make such a plan? That's a common question. Why does God create things in such a way that people suffer? Why does he allow that bad age, Kali Yuga, and people do bad things and they quarrel and they do what they do, and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So why is that part of Krishna's plan? That's a good question, right? If God is all powerful and God is all good, why does he create a situation where people suffer? It would make it seem like he's not all powerful and all good. Either that or he made a mistake. We should, scold him or something. The answer has to do with the free will of the living entity. That's good. The free will of the living entity. This is a nice topic. We're part and parcel of the Supreme. Mami Vangsa Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. We're angsas of the source of everything, tiny fragmental parts. So as the whole, so also the part. Over here is a gold mine, here's a particle of gold. The particle of gold has the same quality as the gold mine. Here's a drop of ocean water, there's the ocean. The small drop of ocean water has the same salt and other minerals as the whole ocean. It's just it's small. The small spark, the big fire. So we have qualities like Krishna. Tiny. And one of Krishna's qualities, he's supremely independent. So we have tiny independence. Qualitatively like Krishna, quantitatively different. So that qualitative existence is free will. We have a minute kind of freedom. And that minute kind of freedom is we have the capacity to use that free will in a wholesome way or in a not wholesome way. If not, we wouldn't have freedom. And in that realm of freedom properly used, it's the realm of love. So when there's love, there's the freedom to say no. You're saying yes, but I have the freedom to say no. That's what love requires, that freedom. And voluntarily I'm saying yes. So those that say no, what to do? Supposing somebody's a mother or father and they have a dependent child, and I know some children, their favorite word is no. And it's cute. So parents get to understand that if they want them to do something, they say, you ask them to do something other than that something, and they say no. Anyway, in our relationship with Krishna, there are those that will say no to that relationship. That's the material world. It's a place, it's for the people who say no to Krishna. And then there's degrees of that saying no. There's a mode of goodness, no. There's a mode of passion, no. There's a mode of ignorance, no. But here's a visual. Ready for a visual? Here's a big vat of white paint. Just like the bowl is pictured as being white, like a white lotus. So here's a big vat of white paint, and here's an eyedropper that has some blue paint. And just squeeze a little few drops of blue paint in the big vat of white paint and stir it. What happens? It's no longer all white. And over there is a little red. A few drops, and it's stir that, and it's representing ignorance and passion. Blue and red and white. So it's not just, so it's now no longer all white. And when actions are done in the modes of nature, there's a reaction. It makes it more red and more blue. And just keep going as the ages go on. And it gets darker and darker, and it's more off-white than it looks muddy in course of time. That's the age of Kali. Very dark. Although it didn't start there. It's just the consequence of misuse of free will. It just accumulates, and it's like a whirlpool, and there's this vortex that goes down and down and down and down. So we're responsible for wrongdoings. We're responsible for our free will choices. And the consequence of misuse of free will is a mind that reads things as unhappiness. And here we are. We bought into the program, and who knows how many lifetimes we've been involved in the program of forgetfulness of Krishna. So the root cause is this ignorance or ignoring of Krishna, and then brings a mind that has a tendency to ignore Krishna. or to ignore transcendence. And there's different philosophies that ignore transcendence and say this is the cause and that's the cause of wrongs, and try to fix the wrongs by addressing that which is not the real wrong. We're responsible, and the way to correct that situation is found within the Bhagavatam, and that is turning our attention again to the Supreme. So there is the age of Kali, and Arjuna and Parikshit could have finished, one stroke of his sword finished the personality of Kali. He can't interfere with Krishna's plan. So now we are in this age of Kali. What are we to do? This is a practical application question. What are we to do about this age where it's getting crazier and crazier? Politically, socially, you name it, there's so many categories of craziness. Gun violence, social unrest, and on and on and on. Medical difficulties. Here we are, coronavirus, having a Sunday program in your living room. It's just. What are we to do about coronavirus? What are we to do about that which is behind the cause of this situation? The answer given by Vyasadeva, when he looked into the future and saw the age of Kali, he decided to make the Vedas accessible to everybody in this age of Kali that don't have the capacity to understand and to read and to go through everything. So he made it accessible. That's Vyasadev's approach, and in the same line of disciplic succession as Vyasadeva, then Narada Muni, Vyas, and so forth, to our present time, is to give others the opportunity to, first ourselves, to receive this message of transcendence captured in Srimad Bhagavatam, and to give others the opportunity to receive that message, and in between to live by it, to receive, to let it enter the heart, to live by it, and to give others the same opportunity. There you go, Srimad Bhagavatam on your bookshelf. So that's the receiving. Then taking the books off the shelf, and by regularly hearing from them, the whole situation of the sufferings of this Kali Yuga become dissipated. It's not like by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, the COVID-19 is going to be over. By reading Srimad Bhagavatam, one will be able to understand what's the reason why these things happen. What's the root cause of suffering in this world? Why do people do things? Without going into it, the scientists, the medical scientists say this particular COVID-19 has something to do with interaction in an exploitative manner with lower animals. And the virus from those lower animals becomes transmitted to the human being that doesn't have the immune system to handle it. And thus devastation. And more, they're predicting, and more, based on the same principle. So if we exploit, then we're going to have misery. Who's the wrongdoer? It's the choices that we make, and to correct that problem, make proper choices, exercise free will properly. And then we can become relieved from the age of Kali and the miseries of material existence permanently. We have a long way to go, but there's a path to go. So there's some thoughts on the topic of identifying the wrongdoer. And then once you have identified the wrongdoer, you can make some corrective measures. In one sense, it's high philosophy. In another sense, it's very practical. Not just high philosophy. Those who, I've had many conversations, so many conversations with devotees whose lives some years ago were like that, and then there was some transformation, and then there was further transformation. There's actual transformation that comes from absorption in the sound vibration and the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's a practical way of addressing the wrongdoings that we have implicated ourselves in just by involvement in material nature in the manner that we've been involved in material nature. It's not being here that's the problem. It's how we have involved ourselves. And it's brought about unpleasant circumstances, which we can take in hand and deal with it in practical terms. Our experience of our consciousness becomes transformed, and our experience of the world around us becomes transformed. It's guaranteed that it will happen like that. So let's see if there's some discussion. There's some online people, I'm sure, because this is with both the Naperville and the Chicago community. So we're going to invite the people in the room to speak something first if they like. If there's nothing, you're okay, but you want to speak first? Anything at all? Comment, question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just reflecting about Maharaja Parikshit. I mean, he actually asks the person to stop, not to go further beyond, and then he asks for mercy, right? And because of Krishna's plan, I think Maharaja Parikshit, he just wants to...
He didn't interfere with Krishna's plan. He
Yeah.
knew the plan.
Yeah.
He knew his duty. And there's the higher duty that's fulfilling Krishna's plan.
Yeah.
So he curbed him in a different way. He didn't kill him, but he curbed him in a different way.
Yeah. I think he restricted him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because Kali was clever. He surrendered to the noble king. And the noble king, when someone surrenders, he doesn't kill them. So now I've surrendered to you, and so please give me a place to stay somewhere within your kingdom. It will put you in jail. We have a place for people like you. Anyway, that's what happened is what happened. So anything further?
No, I think
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Maharaj.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Actually, this is out of this chapter. Like, I always think why always bad things happens to good people. That point I didn't get from that JSD. So I'll always
You want to hear something about why bad things happen to good people?
yeah. I feel like always bad things happens to
No.
Might be perception maybe.
Well, let's do this. There's dukkhalayam ashashvatam. Krishna says, dukkhalayam. This material world by design is a place where there's dukkha. So why does dukkha happen to good people? Why are we here? A place where there's dukkha. Well, the fundamental reason why we're here is we turned our back on Krishna. When you turn your back to the sun, what do you see? Shadow. So why is there shadow and why is there darkness in this shadowy place? Because we turned our back on Krishna. Yeah, but while I've got my back turned to Krishna, I'm a good person. And then you know, one can describe what a good person looks like. I don't hurt people, and I try to do good things for people, and I'm in this dark place. So why do bad things happen to good people?
This is because of Kali.
It's say that use a different metaphor. No, it's not just because of Kali. There's the 4 ages of mankind, and they're all dark. This is more dark, but they're all, to be in the material world, it's like a prison. In a state, the state doesn't say, hey, I got a great idea. What's that? Let's form a state and we'll build a nice prison. Hey, that's a great idea. Let's build a nice prison. The state doesn't build the prison because they're rubbing their hands together thinking, we're going to put people in prison. But when you have a state, you know that there are people going to abide by the law and people that are going to break the law. So this material world is the place of Durga. Her name means she's in charge of it, and it's to a house of correction for wrongdoers. So amongst wrongdoers in a prison, there may be people that are, less evil, and there's some people more evil, but they're all wrongdoers. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in a prison. So why do bad things happen to the people that are good within the prison? Because there's something primary and fundamental that entitled them or required them to be in the prison. There's laws given by God, and there's violation of laws given by God. And it's not just this lifetime, it's who knows how many lifetimes. And it has a cumulative effect. So a person that's good in this life may have, for sure has done, some wrong things in the past. Here comes some misery to a good person. Where is it? What's the cause? Something back there. But then why is that something back there? Like some people say, well, if free will is the problem, then God should just take away our free will, because we may misuse it. Like a child has a toy and they may misuse it, so the parent takes the toy away because they may misuse it. Now, that's different. This is primordial, fundamental, of the soul free will. You can't take away free will. It's of the soul. Otherwise, there's no love, but there is love. So it's there. It can be properly used, misused. Here's $1 million. At the end of the program, everybody in the room here is going to get $1 million. Yay! And some people may use it well and not well. It's not in the hand of the person that gave the $1 million. It's the person who receives it and how they use it. Free will is something that needs to be used properly. And if we misuse it, here we are, in the place of Durga. Prison house. And prisons aren't meant to be nice. They're meant to help people understand that was a mistake. This misuse of free will was a mistake. Now we'll take it some other way probably, because we're covered by the real background reason of why we're here. But Krishna gives the background reason. Raga dvesha samutena, or icha dvesha samutena. Desire and hate. So good people have desire, and they may not properly use that desire. Their free will. Here we are. So now what's the house of correction say? Not just the house of detention. House of correction. Let me redirect that free will, that capacity that I have to have icha, to use my desire properly. That's the transcendental person, not just the good person. It doesn't mean, you'll say it positively, we should still be good. But good for what purpose? What's the purpose behind this? We had this question the other evening. What's the difference between religious and spiritual? Religious is doing the things you're supposed to do, and spiritual is you know the reason behind it. I'm connecting to the source of everything. My consciousness is connecting to the source of everything. That's spiritual. Religious people aren't always spiritual. The spiritual people are always religious. They abide by codes of Dharma. So supposing there's a good person, their consciousness may not be connected with the purpose of their life, and the reason why they're here in this condition is forgetfulness. And then there's degrees of remembrance. And there's the accumulation of past misdeeds that I have to take responsibility for. It's one of those questions you've struggled with a lot. You're not the only one. There's a Jewish man who wrote a book with that title, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. And his name was almost like Hare Krishna. It was Harry Kirshner. And it's a full book, but his essence is God made a mistake. Bad things shouldn't happen to good people, but God slips up every now and then, and sometimes bad things happen to good people. That's not the totality of what he wrote, but that's not Vaishnava understanding. We have our free will, and we can properly or misuse it, and we're responsible for misuse. So then, for bad things happen. Here we are. Are we ready for some online questions?
This question is from Al Zunjang. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrongly, but
It's okay. You can apologize to them.
we have the free will. Why do we misuse our free will while we were in the spiritual world where there are no three modes of nature? I understand in this material world, even our parents told us not to do something, but we still do it. That's because of we are under the three modes of nature. But how could we have the tendency to misuse our free will while we were with Krishna in the spiritual world? Does that mean this misuse of free will tendency also come from Krishna?
Very clever question. I'll give a two-part answer. This question is a standard question, and I have a standard answer to the standard question. And it's not an easily digestible topic one way or the other. My source of reference is Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who writes, do not ask the misleading question, when the living entity was created, or when the living entity was enthralled. Both are events not within time. So what's an event that's not within time? We only know of events within time. Here we are together, and some time will pass and we'll go different directions, or at least some other part of the house or something. time is needed for events. So what's an event that's outside of the realm of time? And the language, it's a linguistic term. There's chronological events and there's ontological events. What's an ontological event? Ontology is the study of being. So there is a relationship with Krishna between souls and Krishna. And ontologically, souls are from Krishna. But it's not that once upon a time, Krishna looked at his watch and said, you know what? I think there should be some living entities. And boop, there's living entities. That's an ontological event. But it's not, a chronological event. But it's not a chronological event. It's living entities are from Krishna. So the misuse of free will, or the living entities being eternally in the spiritual world with Krishna and misusing their free will, it's an ontological reality that we can't place within time, at least time as we know it. Now, how do you wrap your head around an event that's not within time? Like, anything that's, what's eternal? What does that look like? It has no beginning and has no end. You can make an infinity sign, but what is, what's eternal? What's an eternal? Krishna's pastimes are eternal. So how do you understand that? Because we only know stuff that's within time as we know it. Okay, so the ontological reality is living entities have free will, and ontological reality is they can use it properly or they can misuse it. And the misuse of free will is not an event within time that once upon a time we were in the spiritual world, some time passed, we're having a good time, and somehow this really dumb idea came that said, you know what? I want to misuse my free will. And then, boop, here we are. It's not one of those. It's an ontological event, not a chronological event. So the question, Bhaktivinoda Thakur prefaces his statement by saying, do not ask the misleading question. So that my dear listener who asked this question, the question itself is misleading because it places an ontological event in the frame of time as we know it, and it's not taking place within the frame of time as we know it, but it's an ontological event. Can the living entities misuse free will? Yes, of course. Otherwise, there isn't free will. Say it negatively. Without that option to misuse, then we don't have free will. But we're part and parcel of Krishna. We have free will. So there's the possibility of misuse. It's of the soul. It's not of. We're looking. So another way of saying the same thing. This question is looking for a cause outside of that which is constitutional for the soul. Constitutional for the soul is we have free will. So what's the cause? Like, what's that outside of the living entity that caused misuse of free will? There isn't something outside of the living entity that caused it. It's just misuse of free will. Because if it's cause effect, then we're in the realm of time again. To some people, that's satisfying. To some people, they're not at all satisfied. But I like Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation, because otherwise it's quite your position is it's quite unreasonable. And how do you explain something that's quite unreasonable? Well, you won't find a good reason for it. So you won't be satisfied. There isn't a good reason. Misuse of free will is not, there isn't a good reason for it. It's a really dumb deal. So here we are. Next.
So this question is from Neeraj Bhatnagar Prabhu. If a doctor treats a criminal back to health, does the doctor get the karmic reaction for the criminal's subsequent crimes?
No. It's not his free will choice for the criminal to do criminal. It's the criminal's free will choice to do criminal activity, and he takes the responsibility.
And this question is from Kirti Prabhu. How do we identify a wrongdoer? Maharaj Parikshit could see it was Kali who was the culprit, yet he asked Dharma, the bull, as to who was the cause of his misery. Dharma, the bull, gave a philosophical answer.
Yep.
However, in day to day, there may be situations where one may have to name a wrongdoer to correct them or correct a situation. How do we do it following Vaishnava etiquette?
You do it in a manner where you're interested in the well-being of the soul. If it's the interest of the well-being of the soul to have that wrongdoing identified and corrected, then that's the Vaishnava attitude. Last chance. Anything? Okay, you're digesting. Huh? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.